Welcome to the Dear Millennials podcast, where we believe everyone has a story. We invite you and our guests to empower others through authentically sharing your greatest moments and most challenging experiences.
No topic is off limits as we discuss everything from entrepreneurship, mental health, relationships, supporting local, current events, business tips, moving your body, and more. We are so glad that you're here. Welcome to Dear Millennials. Get it.
Hi guys, my name is Tina Hong.
I'm Anna Ostrowski, and we are doing a real talk today. I'm pumped. And I'm also, I didn't tell you this, Tina, before we started. I'm fine now, but just fair warning, I am on vacation, and I did drink some vodka lemonades today.
Better. So this is a real talk, guys. Anywho, today's topic is about careers, how you get in your career, everything leading up to your job and things like that. And if you guys don't know already, Anna is a mastermind at this part of planning a lot of your job. You do a lot of recruiting, you look at a lot of resumes, you do a lot of scouting, things like that, right? So why don't we start off with just maybe how do you find the direction in where you want to go?
Okay, that's a good question. That's a hard one. You're starting off with a really hard one.
Honestly, I feel like a lot of people don't know for a while, but like you kind of want to know the general direction, right?
But I also think that like that's totally okay. So I did not know what I wanted to do freshman year, part of sophomore year, and it wasn't until I did internships and became part of different organizations that I actually knew what I wanted to do. So yes, I do think that you can learn a lot of stuff in your classes for sure, but until you actually do it, until you actually fail and experience it and learn on the job, you're really not going to have a big idea. Because I thought I wanted to do broadcasting. And then I was in the role of like a little news reporter for a while. I did some shadowing and I'm like, hell no, this is not for me. So I will say a couple tips around figuring out what you want to do. Shadow as much as you possibly can. Talk to people like me, talk to people like Tina, find out who's in their network, ask them to shadow. Second thing is self-assessment. You have to know yourself inside and out. And first
like through tests or?
Yeah, through tests. So Enneagram would be one of my favorites. High Five is another really good one. 16 personalities or 16, it's either 16 traits or 16 personalities.
Yeah, Myers-Briggs.
Yeah. So freaking good because when you look at that and then you look at the job description, if there's some correlation, probably going to be a good fit for you.
Yes.
Right.
And there's other ones like DISC, Harrison, all those. Is there
there's so many.
One that you kind of lean toward more or culture index like that you like more?
I personally really like the Enneagram. That's probably one of my favorites. I also really like Strengths Finder. That's another really good one. So I would say if you are trying to figure out like what you want to go into, shadowing, self-assessment, and also figuring out where their demand is. One of the things that Colin talked to us about, which I want to just reiterate, is the fact that it's not always about passion. Like, yes, it's important. Like you have to enjoy what you're doing, but it's called work for a reason, right? Like 70% of your job, you're probably not really going to like that much, but you need to make sure that the 30% that you do like outweighs the shit.
Yeah.
And so that's something that I think younger generations and even myself sometimes struggle with, where I'm like, you know what, screw it. I'm not passionate about it. It's not worth it. And it's like, okay, you don't always have to be passionate about it, but you have to find that demand. And if you can be the one to bring in that supply and you like that 30% of it enough that it outweighs the stuff that's actually work, run with it, do it.
And I think what Colin also said was maybe the actual work is not fulfilling or not I'm not saying fulfilling, but what he thought he'd imagined he was going to do, but the impact that it serves is very fulfilling. And that's what I want to say. Like, you don't have to put up with a job you don't like. What he found to believe is that he loves the impact of it.
No, that's a really, really, really good point, is that he doesn't necessarily, because he runs his own moving company, he doesn't necessarily love moving, but he loves that satisfaction of this person's taken care of, I've helped them, etc. So no, I think that was a
home,
for sure. That was a good call out. Really good call out.
And I love that you said it's totally okay if you don't know. It's totally great.
Oh my gosh, it's totally okay. Are you kidding me? I mean, that's why you have to try different things. And so I think getting comfortable with being uncomfortable is going to be your best friend if you don't know exactly what you want to do, because you just got to try a bunch of different stuff.
And even if you don't use your major, I don't even think that, I think, okay, where you are now, it's totally different. Where you are now, you maybe have thought like, oh, I went to broadcast, I'm going to school for broadcasting, and you're not using it. But I will tell you, like, when I was going through school, I ended up just doing business administration, right, which is general business, right? And initially I kind of felt like, oh man, I should have specialized in like something in specific. But you will find out that, 10 years later, you end up using all the skill sets that in your degree, not necessarily the title of the degree.
Oh, right? Absolutely. Okay. So I did switch to marketing, but still I didn't even end up going, but I still didn't even end up going into marketing. And that's the other thing is like, okay, granted, I know our target market's a little bit older than this, but still with like millennials and even people who are interested in getting their master's, like it's those credentials where you start figuring it out. It's not necessarily like the full blown intense courses.
But don't you think, honestly, this is how I think everything in life is marketing. Like whether you're marketing yourself to get the job, whether you're marketing yourself on it.
Oh my gosh.
Right? Don't you?
This could be a whole nother topic in itself. Like every single human needs to take a marketing or a sales class, because it does not matter what you get into. Like I'm with my whole family right now, and none of them have sales titles, but they all have to do some sort of selling. Like every single human just needs a little bit of that. So I agree for sure. If you can take one business course, do it.
Marketing, for sure. Okay, so let's kind of switch gears a little bit and talking about, so we talked about kind of the direction, right? Let's talk about like, okay, now they're at the point they're applying, right? So let's say it's a sales job or maybe a more procedural type administrative job. What key things on maybe their resume that would kind of like help them stand out? What do you think?
Okay, I'm going to try to just like list off a couple really quick things, because I could talk about this for a whole entire episode. So I'm going to try to list off a couple things super quick. So first of all,
that means you love your job.
Amen to that, actually. So first thing is, we were talking about those self-assessments, right? So one of the things that I did, and I talked to a lot of people who are interested in jobs and doing, is take 5 of those things from your self-assessment. Like, for example, I know you're an Enneagram 6, right? Yeah. So different things about being an Enneagram 6, write it down on the left side of a sheet of paper. And then on the right-hand side, write down 2 specific examples that proved that you actually have that skill set. Because like anyone can tell me they're hardworking. Every single student says, I'm self-disciplined, I'm this, I'm that. And I'm like, I can't, tell me how. Like, I want to know how you actually are. Right. And so doing that exercise, I think, is key. I think it's really good just to do in general, but also if you are looking for a job, going into that interview, you're going to have so much more to talk about and be so much more confident. So that's one. Next thing is use LinkedIn. Holy smokes. So many people at Henry Schein have gotten their job because they've sent a message on LinkedIn. That's it. So before the interview, reach out on LinkedIn. Yeah, before it, say like reaching out, connect with them, and then in a note say, I'm really looking forward to our interview on X date. Like when students do that with me, or potential candidates do that with me, I always really appreciate it. And then the follow-up. So I was just talking about this today. So my mom taught me when I was younger, she's like, if someone has time to write you a check, like for holidays or birthdays, she's like, if someone has time to write you a check, then you have time to write them a thank you card. And I'm like, okay, it's very true. And I also feel that way about our personal lives, right? Or our professional lives. So if someone has time to spend 30 minutes doing an interview with me, I can spend 30 seconds saying, hey, I really appreciate your time. Thank you for your insights on X, Y, and Z, right? So I'll say those 2 things. And then the last one would be, shoot, what was I just going to say? I don't remember what the last one is.
It'll come the resume, how to maybe the resume to
oh my gosh, quantify. The biggest thing that I see on resumes, sorry, the sun is starting to set. Biggest thing that I see on resumes is it's like, it'll be like server or like cashier, and it'll say, like, we all know what a server and a cashier does. Like, you don't need to explain that job description for me. What I want to know is how many customers you served. how much money you were responsible for, how many hours you put into it, how much you increased sales by. Like, you don't have to explain to me that you greeted and sat customers. Like, I think we all, I'm going to sound like a big old bitch in this episode. I think we all know
like
that, but
also
quantify.
that's, and do you think that's a little bit more particular to sales type roles?
I think
Quantifying?
anything. I think it's anything, because it emphasizes what you really did. Like, there's just so anyone, it doesn't matter if it's sales or not. Like, for example, my brother-in-law is sitting right here right now, and he's a professional photographer. Say he wanted to work with a ad agency or do something in photography with someone else. If he says photographer, took pictures of families, like, okay, sweet. How many families? How much did you charge for it? How much sales did you get, right? Like, it makes a huge difference when you quantify it. So it doesn't just have to be sales, but quantifying your resume will just emphasize how much work and time you actually put into it, rather than just, I took pictures, you know?
Yes. This makes me feel like I did a good job on my stuff.
I'm sure you did, Tina. You're a numbers girl. You love that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I literally have I love learning about myself, because how can I better be a good me, and like making sure I'm the right fit, you know? And so I've taken all those personality tests, and I'm curious if nowadays, which I don't know, you can tell me, nowadays, would that be smart to put those things on your resume? Like, hey, I've taken the culture index, and I'm a modern administrator, and then on my Enneagram, on my Strengths Finder, I'm futuristic, adaptable, responsible, and I can't remember the last one right now. Empathetic, which all those like fit me in my job, which is kind of really funny. And then I'm an ENTP. So if you guys want to know everything about me, I just told you right there.
You can tell everything about Tina right now. Yeah, I actually had a gal who's going through the interview process right now with Henry Schein. On the very bottom of her resume, she put all that information on there. And I think that's the best response that you can give. Yeah, I really liked it. I think that's the best response you can give. The very first question when you're going through an interview is, tell me about yourself, right? Like, I don't care what employer it is, every single one of them, the very first thing they're going to say is, tell me a little bit about yourself. And the number of people that are like, well, I just got a dog and I drive this kind of car. I'm like, okay, that's awesome. But like, I want to know a little bit more about you. Right. And so being able to answer that question with, I'm an empathizer, I'm a 6 on the Enneagram, I'm this, I'm this, I'm that, is going to be miles compared to the name of your pet fish. You know?
Right. Unless there's a good story behind the name of your pet fish.
Right. Then tell me all about it.
Yeah. So, I'm thinking, if I were to ever get back into, like, I don't know, applying for another job, which I would never, but if I were to be in this time period with everything being via Zoom, I would almost send like a follow-up card as well as like a little follow-up video. Hey, this is Tina. I had such, you know what I mean?
Yes, ma'am.
Cool.
Yes. I'm so glad that you brought that up.
The other thing is, I would also probably clean up all my social media prior to applying. So what are your thoughts on that?
Oh, yeah. I'm so glad that you brought that up. So we have a gal who she just went through the interview process in Dallas. And one of the things that she did after her interview is she sent a video of herself to the regional manager. And she's like, I know you talked about the importance of being creative in sales. So I wanted to reach out to you and thank you with my big smile, saying how much I appreciated X, Y, and Z. Right. And she sent her a video of that. That moved her to the very front. We're probably
my gosh. And probably because she pulled something from the interview.
Exactly.
The regional manager said, right?
Exactly. Exactly. Awesome. Yeah.
And then what about social media, like cleanup and things like that?
Yes, I think social media, but the biggest one that everyone looks at first is your LinkedIn. If you're not active on LinkedIn, if you're not posting on LinkedIn, if you're not commenting, if you're not sharing with things on LinkedIn, that's a red flag for me.
Got it.
I shouldn't say it's a yellow flag. Can I say a yellow flag? It's a yellow flag for me. It's not a red flag. It's a yellow flag. One of the things that I think is really great about LinkedIn, and this is the point that I was thinking about earlier before I forgot, is with utilizing LinkedIn, and also when you type in a company's name into Google, you know how at the top it says like images, videos, there's a button that says news. Freaking click on that for the company that you're looking for. Click on the news button, because if you can come say to me, hey, I saw on the news that you guys were just awarded most ethical company, fantastic.
Yes.
Or also for candidates too, if you look at the news and you're seeing, oh, stocks are dropping, this and this happened, like not so good things, maybe you want to reevaluate if that's a company that you want to work for. So I just think utilizing those news features, not only through Google, but also LinkedIn, is super beneficial going into the interview if it's a good thing, or maybe saying, not interested in the interview because it doesn't look that good.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think you're totally right. Basically researching who you're, making sure that it's a great fit for you as well. And I would also kind of add, do you feel like you're the right fit? Do you feel like they're a right fit for you, because you have to be just as happy on the other end too.
So I think that's a really good point. Before maybe I ask you a question or two, is I know I have sounded kind of like a jerk, I feel like, during this real talk, but one of the things that I want to emphasize is you need to be interviewing that company just as much as they're interviewing you. You're going to be putting in 50, 60, however many hours a week at this company. You need to make sure you're asking them just as many questions. One of my biggest pet peeves, and I've talked to a lot of other companies, a lot of other different recruiters that say, I'll be going through an interview with a candidate. They seem really, really great. And then I say, what questions do you have for me? And they go, I think you covered everything. And it's like, no, we've only been talking for 20 minutes and you want to do this for your career? Like, you have to have questions for me. So one thing that I would say to figure out what questions to ask employers is, obviously you can Google it, but if you want better questions, figure out what your non-negotiables are. So for you, Tina, maybe your non-negotiable in a job is you want to work for a company that gives back. You want to work for a company that gives back to the community. For me, my non-negotiable was I wanted a company who was going to focus on professional development, who was going to help me grow, that I could eventually move into leadership. And so those are the types of questions that you ask during the interview.
Yeah.
What types of things do you do to help promote your employees, to help them grow? What types of things do you do to help them give back to the community, right? So figuring out what questions to ask starts with that self-awareness piece again, and knowing what it is you're looking for in a career and asking about it. So, but what things do you have, Tina? Because you've been doing all this too. You've had people that have worked for you on your team. Like, what other comments would you say?
Yeah, I thought you did an amazing job on everything. I would almost just reiterate some of the things from the standpoint of like researching, making sure. I would also ask, when you're talking about personal growth, that's huge for me, but I would also talk about what's the timeline of that personal growth and how does that work in this company? Because I think lots of times people are like, well, you have to work this way up and it's going to take 8 years. Yep. Well, if that's not aligned with what you're wanting, then you should find somewhere else, right? And then secondly, I would also probably talk about what does a normal life of someone look like, right? Is it have, like, one of my core values is autonomy. I need to have a lot of freedom. I need to have like really large lines that I can go do whatever I want, however I want to do it, with obviously an ethical company, which is what I value. And then I would say some other key things that I would maybe add is, like, how you were talking about marketing in a sense, like everything we do is marketing. I would think little key things that kind of stand you apart would be like that follow-up letter, the quality of that card, the quality of your handwriting, how you wrote your email, following them on LinkedIn, like you said, pulling like a nugget of information about them, knowing your company that you're interviewing for better than they know you, so that you really look like you're all in. Like, I'm not gonna lie, I actually got rejected from one job. So truth be told, like, I got five ways through. So before I was personal training and did that for 10 years, right? So I did degrees in business, and I didn't think I was going to end up doing that, but it made sense because it was an entrepreneurial role. I part owned it. So I knew, okay, I liked the idea of being an owner, right? A high level role. So when I did all my research on all my personality tests, it came down to a couple careers that I wanted to do, right? And one of them was actually in the mortgage industry. Well, I thought about what are my core values at this point in my life was I didn't want to start over every month and grind. Like that just wasn't for me. But I did like the idea of helping put someone in their dream home. I think that's so cool, right? So when I went through the 5th interview, they were like, "We love you," and then they told me like, "Hey, we're actually not going to take you on." And I was distraught. I was like, "What? You hyped me up. You thought like I was it, right?" And then I called the recruiter. "Hey, I was just curious. You guys told me, it was a great fit. I was curious why I got declined." And he said, "We actually think you're amazing. We just felt at an in-call, like it was a call center type of mortgage place. And he's like, we just thought you're more of a field worker. Like you would be better out in the field." So I was like, oh, it's not that I was bad. And it's not that I wasn't a good fit because you feel that rejection. It was just I would be happier in a field job. So they saw me like possibly leaving after 6 months because I would be bored. So don't hesitate to ask the recruiter, like, or the employer, like, "Hey, what could have been different, in the situation?"
Well, so I'm really glad that you just highlighted that. I love it when candidates ask me that question. And I feel like if anyone listening to this does any sort of recruiting, that is our responsibility to tell them why. It really is.
Is it weird if they're like, "Hey, Anna, if I did another internship, could I come back? Like, could you see a skill develop and it's worth them coming back?"
I tell them that. We talk about that all the time.
You do?
Oh,
cool.
Yeah.
Okay, I wasn't sure.
For sure. I mean, maybe that's a little like abnormal. But I like having that open communication about it.
What other last like pre-job or direction do you feel is fitting?
So there's 2 things. I'm going to get like a little deep right here for a second. There's 2 things that I want to highlight that I don't necessarily think that we talk about when it comes to applying for jobs. So the first one is I want to know who you are. Like, share your freaking story. I have done so many career fairs, and it is the young women who come to me and they say, "Anna, I was the first showing that she was a Muslim to wear a hijab on her tennis team." She told me that story about how she overcame that. I had a burn victim talk to me about how he overcame that.
Oh.
I had a cancer survivor tell me how they had to overcome that. So I'm not saying you have to go through something traumatic. Hell, I've had students come on saying, "I have to work 3 jobs in order to pay for my own college." Like, talk to me about that. Yeah, same. Tina and I, both of us were in that boat. Exactly. Like, talk to me about that. Like, don't try to fit yourself into this cookie cutter mold of what you think the employer wants to hear. That's BS. Be you. Like, tell me your story, because that means way more than, "Oh, I read this extra book." Like, that's great, but like and I'm all for reading, so that's kind of a bad example because I'm all about it. But because during interviews I do ask you what books you're reading. By the way, a lot of employers are starting to do that. We ask what books you're reading. So I just want to really emphasize the fact that you have to share your story. The other thing that I want to emphasize is use this digital world and all of the COVID shit that we're going through and what we've done in terms of technology and the way to communicate to your advantage. You brought up doing videos earlier. People are doing newsletters now. People are doing so many awesome creative things. So like, use your creativity as much as freaking possible. Like, that is what's going to make you stand out. I get so often people are like, "What's going to make me stand out? What's going to make me be unique?" I had a girl one time, she asked me what book for her to get a career at Henry Schein. And I brought up a book. She bought the book, read the book, wrote a handwritten note out inside of it with all of her takeaways from it, and sent it back to me.
Shut up. That's good.
Right?
That's good.
Right? Like, just there's so many. And then the girl doing the video follow-up. Like, there's so many things that you can do to be creative. So just mostly speaking with millennials and now even like Gen Z, like, we have like, some of these older people that are like, oh, you guys and your technology. And it's like, use that to your advantage, like own that to be creative. So I would just say, don't be afraid to ask the questions. Don't be afraid to ask questions about being a female in that world. Don't be afraid to ask questions about commission. I wouldn't have it be your first question, but definitely ask those types of questions. Like, this is your career that we're talking about. You're going to be spending more time doing this than you will with your family sometimes, unfortunately. So it's like, you need to make sure you like it. So I would say, don't be afraid to ask those questions, share your story, and use technology to be creative as freaking possible, and know yourself. That's what's going to get you the job, and that's what's going to make you happy, is if you know yourself and you know that it aligns with what the company stands for.
Yeah, I love that. I had 3 more questions, but I know we're out on time.
Can we do it in our next one?
Yeah, it was just, we can crop it here if you want.
Well, tell me, just ask one.
Curious on, okay, yeah, because I'm gonna forget it if I don't.
Okay.
So one of them is just like, I think a lot of substantial, I know this is not our our market, I guess, but I feel like older individuals, like, how do they still stay relevant when younger, more technology savvy, more credentialed, I guess, are coming up on their heels for possibly cheaper pay, right? So how do they stay relevant?
A couple things I would say to that. One, utilize your experience. If you are not creating a brag book for yourself of all things that you've accomplished, go back and start doing it now. Like, they have way more things that they can brag about and experiences that they can speak to. So utilize those. And I would encourage them to create a plan for whatever company it is they're interviewing for, right? So I have done X, Y, and Z. So I'm taking that X, Y, and Z to be able to do this for your company. So use the brag book to create almost like a future plan. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that would be number one. The second thing is, don't be afraid to ask for freaking help. You know how many YouTube videos there are on all this stuff? Like, holy smokes, block out a time in your calendar, literally block it out. Cause you and I both know if we don't block out time, it ain't happening. Right. So block off time in your calendar to say, I'm going to watch YouTube videos for 2 hours on how to use Adobe, on how to get into graphic design, so I can edit my resume for X, Y, and Z. Yeah.
I think sometimes, like, even a younger rep at your job, like, so it's a two-way street in my job. Like, I'll have an older rep that's like, can teach me some things, and then I can teach them some things, like,
for sure.
So that's super helpful too. So they find value on both sides of the relationship.
Yeah, right? They can't be afraid to ask some of the younger people how to do stuff, and just utilize resources. I mean, they preach it to us millennials, and now Gen Z coming on board, they say, utilize your resources, utilize the resources. They got to do the same thing. So I would say using your brag book, creating a future plan, and blocking off time to really utilize those resources, because they're unlimited now. We live in a world where data is at your fingertips, like quality data is at your fingertips. There's no reason why you should be falling behind.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I loved today's talk about all the career stuff, especially with, there was a lot of layoffs and furloughs from COVID. And I think this is a really great topic that is top of mind right now as we come into a new season. Okay. Thank you, everyone. If you guys did not get some awesome, helpful tips, we're going to also notate it in our post. But I'm Tina Hong.
Yay. I'm Anna Ostrowski. Thanks for asking me such great questions, Tina.
Yeah, that was so awesome.
Yay. I'll talk to you later, girl.
For later.
Okay, deal. Bye.
Thank you so much for joining us. If you like this podcast or think others would benefit from it, please be sure to like, subscribe, review, and share on all platforms, including iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, and Instagram. We'll see you next time.